Hi everyone, I'm Kristen, the cross stitching runner, and welcome to my channel. I want to say a big hello and welcome to all new and returning viewers. And if by chance you've stumbled across this channel is all about cross stitch with a bit of life stuff thrown in. And this particular episode is part two of last week's episode, where last episode was more about some of the haul, a huge finish, and a bit of life stuff and stitching things that have been going on. This episode is more about me trying to catch up on the stitching that I've needed to put on pause while I was working on the major finish of Dewdrop Daisy. So if by chance you've not seen that episode and you're curious about the finish of Dewdrop Daisy, go and check out last week's episode, and I really hope you enjoy that episode. In the meantime, with this particular episode, I'm going to be working on a few different projects. The first project you'll see me work on is black and white rolled up daisy, which you'll see the cover page just behind me near the light switch. That is a hot cross stitching design, and I needed to get about 73 to 78 stitches in for that because of Collingwood's win a couple of weeks ago now. I know I need to put a few more stitches in, probably close to another 100 in. They had actually tied their game this weekend. To all put into context, I am participating in the AFL stitching challenge that I've made up for myself as a way of finding a different way to be motivated to complete some projects and also justify me sitting on my butt and watching football at the same time. And the next project that you'll see, or at some point during the editing process, I'll include the Fight Like a Girl project. And I don't think I've got, actually, yes, I do have the cover page behind me. It's a lot of that dark blue color that you see behind me. That's designed by Tanya Amity, based on some artwork by Elena Zhnedkova. And I had purchased that particular chart via an Etsy store many years ago. And Fight Like a Girl is associated with the Brisbane Lions AFL team. And at the moment, I don't remember how many stitches I needed to put into that project, but I think it was a combined total of 100 to 200 stitches, because it was the combination of at least two, maybe three wins that Brisbane Lions had. The other project that you may see in this stitch with me is it is the project that is kind of in the middle, just next to the horses card. It is I Count My Lucky Stars, and that is a chart that I designed for hot cross stitching. The full quote is, "I count my lucky stars every day that you are in my life." And that particular project, off the top of my head, I can't remember which AFL team I've got associated with. I needed to get, I think, at least 100 stitches put into that. And I may need to get some more done for it because I'm still one round behind with the stitching challenge that I'm doing. Another project that you may see being worked on is Halloween Treats 2. Halloween Treats 2 is a design by Tilton Crafts, and I've decided to start in the middle of that project and work my way out from it, because that's where all the fun, interesting stuff is for that piece. And if the rest of the background and the edges of that piece don't quite fit, I'm not going to be upset or sad by it because of the way that piece or chart has been designed, or the way the design has been charted. So I hope that you enjoy this particular episode, because I with the way that I've filmed it, edited it, and such, I have found it easier to film the stitching separate to me chattering away, because I have found historically that I don't concentrate as well as what I could if I am not talking so much. So if I'm talking a bit, I will still get some stitching done, just not as much as what I'd like to. And with the chattering away, it was easier for me to just chatter away and hypothesize. That's a tough word when I'm tired. Just chatter away and mull over different topics and all. And if by chance even if you don't necessarily like what I was talking about, let me know as well. Like if there was other stuff that you'd rather hear about, like the actual runs that I go on, rather than some of the not so well known challenges that female runners especially experience, or if you want to talk more about any other things that, or any other themes that you hear in this next section, I'd love to hear about it. So let's get into it. There are times when being a female runner that there are things that we don't talk about, but we probably should. So as part of this Stitch With Me and focusing on some of the different stitching projects I'm really needing to catch up on, I just wanted to have a bit of a chat and reflection on some of the things that I hadn't realised I was getting myself into at the start of my running journey, and what I've learnt so far, especially with moving into state and running around a city that is very much blue collar compared with my hometown that is very much a white collar public servant town. And I guess the first thing that has really struck me as something I would never have thought to have to worry about or encounter since, or until I moved here, was the public reaction to a female running around doing their thing. And the first thing, I guess, the first thing was my figure. I never would have imagined that there would be so many people commenting on someone who is about 152, 153 centimeters tall, which is about 5'2", I think it is in the other measurement terms, and someone who is carrying probably 20 kilos or so extra kilos than what the BMI ratings say that someone of that height should be carrying, and someone who is also quite busty. And I never would have thought that there would be people who would comment on such things. So, to put into perspective, I have had people comment and question, I wonder what it's like to run with big boobs, or something very similar to that wording. And it's been on more than one occasion that I've had people say this, and they've not said it to my face, so to speak. It's been a passing question that I have heard blokes say to other blokes. And I'm near tempted to actually create a cross stitch pattern with the phrasing of running with big boobs is like running with rock melons strapped to your chest. people won't notice. I swear, they won't comment or point. I swear, you'll be fine. Or something very similar to that wording. And I've also had people, mostly blokes again, leaning out of their vehicles, yelling stuff at me. I don't know what they have been saying because I've had music playing in my earphones and there's been other surrounding noises that would distract or take away whatever words the people are trying to say. And I have also had people, what feels like, try to intimidate me in the sense that I have been rightly running in the lane that I need to be in on the footpaths and such. In Australia, we predominantly run on the left-hand side of the footpath, and around the town that I live in, we share a lot of the footpaths with cyclists as well as pedestrians who are walking dogs, enjoying time out with friends and all that good stuff. And I have had on a few instances, one that really stands out in my mind though, a cyclist intentionally riding in the lane that I am running in, and it felt like we were playing chicken for a while there, and I really don't know why they felt the need to be riding in my lane when they have their own dedicated lane. And I held my ground. I stayed in the lane that I was running in, and they moved back into their own lane, but it felt like they were trying to intimidate me, and it was a horrible, horrible feeling. I have also had other runners who run three wide on a footpath, and it's like, guys, move over. There is plenty of room for you to be running over to the left hand side. You don't need to be taking up as much of the path as you are. And it's these sorts of things, these sorts of experiences that I don't think I'm alone on. And it's something that as other females, we don't talk about this much. And I'm not saying this to say that we shouldn't be running, or I'm not saying this to try and put anyone off from running, but it feeds into the other aspect with running of feeling safe, feeling that we should be able to run along the paths that we want to run on without feeling intimidated or being made to feel like we shouldn't be out trying to take care of ourselves and to try and be healthy, which is also the other aspect of something I've noticed a lot around here as well, that the fashion. I appreciate that each generation, and I guess fashion trends come and go and all the rest. And I love that there are people who are confident enough to wear not a lot and be confident to show what they've achieved and be proud of wearing short shorts and crop tops and that to an extent. Hey, I'm a little bit envious, but by the same token, I have received so much scrutiny over the years by different people about my body that I don't have the confidence to do it. I still feel the need to cover up and hide and be a little bit like, I think it's Penelope Bridgerton or Penelope Mayflower, whatever her Fairweather from Bridgerton, that TV show on Netflix, where she's always lurking in the shadows and hiding because I guess of different reasons, but nonetheless, it's something where the people who are confident to be wearing the clothes that they are then having these blokes who are quite obviously staring. They have no subtlety about what they are doing, and I don't know if some of these women are aware of the blokes leering at them and thinking. I guess you can't control people's thoughts or reactions or anything like that, but I guess because of my own thoughts and feelings about how I look, I know how I would feel if I had people looking at me in a similar way. Just it makes me uncomfortable nonetheless. So I'm just curious about other people's experiences from that running perspective and trying to be fit and healthy and trying to be fit as well. And to also add to the experiences of public reaction and feeling safe and such, I have even been running and walking around, I guess, the suburban areas of where I live and running past construction sites. And I feel horrible even mentioning this because I have very close family and friends who work, currently work or have worked on construction sites, and I I feel sad that they may have worked or are working with people who react in the way that I'm about to describe. There's been one very strong instance that stands out where there were a group of blokes who were reacting like they were animals in a zoo and causing lots of noise and fuss over a female walking past on a nice, beautiful, sunny, warm day and wearing a tank top and three-quarter length pants. And these workers were reacting as though they had just gotten out of jail or they were teenagers pumped up with tons of hormones and reacting as though they had never come across a female before and were trying to grab that person's attention and let them know in very lewd and derogatory ways what they wanted to do to that person. And it's really, really off putting. And these are just some of my own experiences in the course of 18 months or so that I have been here. And it's been an eye-opening experience and certainly has me acknowledging that I need to perhaps toughen up, so to speak, get a thicker skin, increase my emotional intelligence to not let these situations, words, and experiences get to me. However, it is also a sad situation of I'm surely not the only person who is experiencing this. And I know I haven't been the only person to experience this, not just here in where I live, but around the world. When I was watching a podcast from the running channel, I think they had very briefly touched on this type of topic where one of the female runners had described that there was one time she had been running around her suburb or hometown, and there had been some people riding a bicycle coming up behind her and tapped her on the bum. And it's that sort of shock feeling of how do I react to this? What's going on here? And just the thought of what else could have happened aside from that invasion of space and unwarranted physical attention and such. It's these sort of things that as women we don't talk much about, and I think we really need to also shed some light on it, but also help younger people of all genders realize what's going on and to try and bring about some kind of change where we have had that Me Too change that or a big blow up on social media and such with some of the things that have happened and potentially still are happening in Hollywood, but that happen in other workplaces around the world as well. So it sounds like a very heavy and low kind of topic, but I'm trying to talk about this. I've been trying to bring a little bit of upbeat feeling to it as well because it's something that will continue to happen unless we do something about it. And I haven't quite figured out myself as to what the best approaches would be because in some circumstances it is such a fleeting moment because everyone around is moving going in different directions and such, and so is it a question of do you turn around and then try and catch up to the people who've made the comments, or do you pull them up and say, hey, don't say that, I don't appreciate it, do you realize what you're saying and how it makes me feel? And then that other perspective is here in Australia. There's this. I don't even know what to call it. It sort of came about during COVID, and I guess the best wording I can put to this is called the Karen effect. So in Australia, when there was all these lockdowns happening and these rules about wearing masks and such, there was a lady who had gone into Bunnings by memory, and she was of a particular age, sort of around the middle age perhaps of the 40s, and she believed that she didn't need to wear a face mask, but the staff were asking her to wear a face mask for health reasons and such. And it has morphed into situations where when a woman is trying to potentially stand up for themselves, and it's a situation where sometimes those people are acting entitled, and there are situations where it is more like the person is acting like they're entitled rather than actually standing up for themselves or being snarky or any other sort of variations. And it's that fear factor as well of, do I speak up? Do I say something? Do I try and pull these people, or do any of us try to pull these people in line and sort of say, look, what you said isn't cool. This is how it makes me feel, and uh, try and put it in ways that um, tries to enable these people to understand their actions and try and bring about some positive change. And I don't know what the best ways are to go about it. So I'm really keen for people to put comments in the comment box or create some kind of conversation here the about the experiences you've had as a runner, or if you're out being fit and active, and the ways in which we can improve the society's people's perceptions and such around us. Because in these sort of circumstances, I get stuck in my head, unfortunately, about the words that have been said and experiences that I've had, and there are times when I don't want to leave the house, or I have to force myself and encourage myself to get out there and go for that walk and realize that and remember that everyone really is just lost in their own worlds and have bigger problems going on than to worry about what someone is wearing or what they are doing. And For the people who are concerned about those things, it is more of a reflection of them rather than yourself. And for the people, I guess, who are questioning what it's like to run with big boobs, or to comment on what someone is wearing or what they are doing and how they are doing it and such, I try to remind myself that they're jealous that they can't do it themselves, or there is some kind of lack mentality within their life, and their way of thinking that is causing this kind of reaction or entitlement or any other situation that can come from it, and that it is up to those people to try and make an improvement in themselves if they're even aware of it, which is a bit sad if they're not. So I guess this is a little bit of a ramble and spiel on some of the really just uncomfortable things that have occurred for me as a runner. And it has also had that flow and effect of then figuring out where I should be running, and considering the joining of a running group compared with continuing to run on my own, because there is that safety in numbers component, but I also love the flexibility of running on my own. I have in the past run with people, and each pairing has been a little bit different. There are times when I've gone for runs with my boyfriend when time was a little bit different, and we didn't really talk too much. I think both of us were trying to work through our own physical discomforts that comes with running. And then there's been other times where I've gone for runs with people who I've worked with, and that hasn't always worked out either, because we run at different paces, and then some of those people are or have been quite chatty, and that can be okay for them as a way of distracting, and to an extent can help me be distracted by what I'm doing. But the challenge is then they're wanting a response from me, and I can't give them a response because I'm quietly dying as part of trying to go for the run, keep up with them, and um, anything in between. And it got to the point where it was too much, and I've very much valued that time to myself, that time to just put the headphones in and enjoy the music that I'm listening to, and focusing on what I'm trying to achieve. And that was back in my hometown doing all of those things, and it definitely has me considering joining a running group here where I currently live, because there are a lot of running groups, and it kind of looks like it could be fun. And there would be that company side of things, and I would be able to meet some new people as well. That could be a positive thing. And I would then be able to find out if other women have had similar experiences to myself as well. And then it's also got me thinking about the time of day and where I'm going for my runs, that can have the influence on public reaction, feeling safe, and body confidence, and all of that jazz. Because I've definitely found that if there are times in the morning where I want to go for a run, but I don't want to be around too many people, that I've found some paths that I can take for that, which can be good. It can be nice. I just need to make sure it's daylight when I do that. I've not had any negative experiences with running at dusk or dawn just yet. it's just a personal safety thing that I found that I need to be careful with, because some of the quieter paths that I do like to run on, there is a possibility that there could be people or animals lurking in the shadows that may unintentionally cause me harm, or in some cases intentionally. Sadly, there is a fairly high um, homeless community around here. There's also quite a lot of people who are unfortunately mentally ill, and there may not be as many resources around here to help them. There are also a small community of people who are sadly drug affected as well. So I've not had any negative impacts as yet, but it's something that I'm definitely aware of, and I'm finding that I need to be careful of where I run, just in case there I come across um, situations that could cause me harm without me doing too much. I don't even know what those circumstances could be, and I'm really not wanting to find out either. And with the other areas that I could run in or on or around that are safer, but I'm not wanting to be around people, I've learned that I need to do that in the afternoons, because in the mornings we've got this beautiful boardwalk style of setup around my where I am, and it's very popular in the mornings because there's some cafes that people can go to and have breakfast, grab a coffee, and be walking and talking and enjoying those coffees while they're making their way back to home and to their cars and such. And running is hard enough without having to weave around people. At least that's the experiences I've had. And I get pedestrian rage. I don't know about you, but I at least get pedestrian rage where I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling grumpy, and then I come across a wall of people who are walking about 3 to 4 wide. A couple of people might be walking with their dogs as well, which is great. They're getting out, the dogs are getting fresh air and everything, stretching their legs too. The people sometimes are so focused on who they're talking with or what's happening on their phone that they're not always conscious of where their dogs are walking and how their dogs might be reacting to other people walking past with their dogs, or cyclists, or other runners, and everything in between. And so it's certainly almost like an obstacle course that we're trying to deal with. So I've certainly learnt to go along those paths in the afternoons, because it is a bit quieter, because those cafes are closed. They close by memory at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's certainly been a learning curve. So, with all of this rambling and such about some of these experiences that female runners we don't talk about much, but we need to talk about more, it just has me wondering, what experiences have you had if you are a runner that we don't talk about much, that I haven't mentioned here? And I'm also curious, like, if you happen to be a male listening to this and you are a runner, or you know someone who is a runner who you care about, and how do you feel about these sort of experiences that your female loved one may have experienced? Is there something that you might be able to do with talking about your male friends to bring it to their attention about some of the comments that they may come out with or may be thinking and all? And just sparking that conversation, that's the main bit, just to spark that conversation and have positive conversation about change and improving the way that we react to each other about trying to be fit and healthy and encouraging each other rather than and encouraging each other in a positive way, saying, hey, yeah, you go, well done, or whatever positive um, encouragement there is, rather than woof whistling or staring and making people feel uncomfortable or commenting on their body, especially specific areas, because we need to improve this. There's no doubt about it. We need to improve this. So let's move on to a very, very different topic of conversation as part of this Stitch with Me, because there's still so much more we can talk about on this running thing, but there's heaps of other topics to talk about. So let's have a bit of a chat about something completely different. Okay, so for a completely different change of pace, I'm going to be talking a bit about some of the YouTube clips that I've really gotten into watching. And I don't often talk about some of my interests with others because I guess I am judging myself in terms of being authentic to myself and just letting people know, like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, and all the rest, because for many years I've learned to hide certain parts of my personality around certain people because I've been afraid of being judged and afraid of losing friends as a result of me just saying, hey, look, I'm interested in psychological thrillers. I like watching horror movies and I love reading these sorts of books like true crime and uh, reading stuff on morbid things and urban legends and all that kind of stuff, because I know that some people aren't always interested in that kind of thing, a bit like the running stuff that I was talking about before. So, hey, let's get into some of these YouTube stuff that I've been really enjoying watching. And I've been starting to watch a lot of clips from a channel called Amy's Crypt. And Amy and her husband are Aussie, and they have, by the looks of things, had the channel for a couple of years now, at least, perhaps more than 2 years. And what they do is go around to a variety of places in Australia and overseas. So some of the videos that I have seen overseas that they've travelled to are some areas of Europe, and I think they've perhaps gone to some places in America as well. And then some of the places that they've been to here in Australia. One of the clips I saw, I think it was sort of mid-May that I was watching, the the clip was on Amy and her husband Jared going to the Melbourne quarantine station, and they've also been to a place called the Burra Mines. And initially, when I saw the word Burra, I immediately thought of the small country town that is perhaps an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know, I've only been there once, but there's a place called Burra that's also semi near my hometown. And I thought, oh, cool, I think I've heard of this place. But anyway, the place Burra Mines is actually in South Australia, which is the home state of Amy and Jared. But what I'm getting at with this is they're going to a lot of these different places in Australia and overseas that are reported to be haunted or to have some interesting things happening. And what Amy and Jared are doing are testing to see how true some of these stories might be, and if there really are spirits there, ghosts and such, try and, I guess, have a chat with some of those spirits to find out their stories, I guess, and find out how true some of the stories might be. And it's certainly been interesting because in years gone by, I've certainly been interested in those sorts of things, and curious as to how true some stories might be, and still enjoying the stories for what they are, even if they end up being debunked and being untrue. So it has certainly just been quite interesting. And what I have found interesting is the ways in which Amy and Jared and similar people find out if any of these places are actually haunted or if there are spirits and such there, where technology has helped and changed so much. And it just has me wondering. I still have a little bit of skepticism to go, okay, well, how true is this? There's certain, they call them cat balls, that have got special lights and these other special tools that can make sound and such if people do get too close to them. And these, pardon me, these lights will flicker, or there'll be some kind of special alarm or something that might go off. And there's also these special apps that they use as well to try and sort of communicate with any spirits and energies that might be around. And it has been kind of cool to sort of hear and see what comes through, especially when they've got cameras on tripods that they just leave alone in dark rooms, and then they walk away and perhaps go outside to look at other locations around the abandoned building or location where they are. And there are times when voices have come through on these devices, and some of these other special cat balls and things do light up, and these little alarm things do go off. And the cool thing is that these people, they do show that sometimes the lights and such are triggered by moths that might fly by and perhaps land on the devices, or there's other circumstances when there'll be noises but they can't always be explained. And sometimes they do actually say, okay, look, it's a windy night, and the windows are rattling, or it's quite cold at the moment, so the buildings and such might be settling and adjusting, or whatever other scenario that might be happening. And then there are times when there is a little bit of that, oh my God, maybe that really wasn't the building shifting or creaking or anything like that. Maybe it was something a bit different. And then there's other circumstances where I can't help but wonder if it is other people who are around who might be making the footstep sound. So whether there are people in a crew dressed in black who might be lurking in the shadows to make some of the faint knocking sounds on doors or taps and such, or in some circumstances, if the locations are kind of open to the public, kind of in a sense that whilst there's people who are doing the YouTube recordings and such, they may have legitimate permission to be there. There might be others who are trespassing, and unbeknownst to these YouTube people, that the trespassers might be making the noises instead, and sometimes causing the footsteps or causing the taps and such. So it's just a curious and interesting thing. And leaning more towards the morbid side of stuff. There's actually a podcast that I enjoy listening to, especially if I'm at the gym doing weights or something. I'll pop that podcast on, and it's a podcast hosted by two ladies from America, and they're talking all things morbid in the sense that they're talking about true crime that has happened from hundreds of years ago through to only quite recently in terms of a few years ago. And these crimes might be around, or I guess predominantly, murders that have happened. So we're talking about serial killers and those sorts of things. And there'll be other circumstances where they'll have like an episode on stories that listeners have. So they've got a thing called listener tales, and the with the listener tales, people can write in and they'll talk about like some spooky experiences that they've had as well, or some close calls with some very sketchy circumstances where they could have actually had some serious harm done to them. And it's been interesting listening to those sort of tales as well. And aside from the true crime and such, the morbid podcast, they also talk about the, I guess, urban legends and I guess some of the tales and such that are from other countries as well, or folklore. That's probably the best word I can use. So there are urban legends, but it's also the folklore as well, where I'm thinking about the country Ireland and some of the folklore that comes out of there around the fairies and goblins, ghouls, and I guess I'm not just attributing Ireland, but I guess other countries as well that have similar tales that talk about, or yeah, I guess talk about some of the different things and creatures that become folklore and talk and explain about like the tooth fairy, how that sort of has come about, who collects teeth or takes children away, or I'm making things up a little bit here as well, but it's those sort of things around the folklore and all those sort of things that sound quite morbid and strange and weird, but it serves a practicality as well. And it comes stems back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier with some of my experiences around running and keeping safe and all of that jazz, where listening to true crime stories and morbid things and all, as a female needing to keep safe, there are these things that sort of stay in my mind a little bit to go, okay, well, be careful of this because that can happen, or do this to avoid that, or they're sort of loose tales or loose rules, so to speak, of things to just be aware of and ways that could help with staying safe. And sometimes I haven't realized just how much these morbid tales and true crime and all the rest can have an influence on other areas of my life, in the sense that earlier this year, if not towards the end of last year, my boyfriend and I were going to a few different open homes as getting our feelers out there for what our price range is to potentially buy a home here where we are. And there was this one place that we looked at, and I was immediately thinking of quite a few different true crime stories that have made the news, where sadly some people have been kidnapped and kept in basements and other hidey holes that have been created in homes and such. And there were a couple of homes that didn't quite give those vibes, but I had those stories in the back of my mind of, okay, I don't feel comfortable with this home because there would I would always be thinking of those true crime stories every time I would walk up and down the internal stairs if we did purchase that home or location or anything similar to that. And I guess it's probably one of the slightly good things of listening to those sorts of podcasts, because it sort of opens my eyes up just a little bit more to the realities of life and what happens out there, because I also acknowledge that I have lived a bit of a sheltered life, and I'm very privileged and lucky to have the life that I've had as well. And my life could have been very different if key people and situations had not been there. That said, it's something where I think I'll always have that interest in ghosts and psychological thrillers and morbid things, and it's a way of me just learning about places and locations and people's stories as well, because leading back to the Melbourne quarantine station that Amy and Jared from the YouTube channel Amy's Crypt, their investigations, so to speak, or their night tour of the quarantine station, I learned quite a bit about there. And first of all, and this is also showing how naive I am, I hadn't realised that Melbourne had a quarantine station. I thought that Sydney was the only place to have one. And upon reflecting on this, it was like, well, Kristen, this makes a lot of sense. Come on, wake up here. Because it makes a lot of sense for every state in Australia to have at least one quarantine station, because especially thinking back to a century ago, if not further back, when there was a lot of migration happening to Australia and a lot of people coming in from different locations around the world, and the wars that have happened and are still happening, and people fleeing countries to come to Australia to seek a better life. The quarantine stations were a way for Australia at the time to control diseases that might be brought in unknowingly and such. And the sad thing, however, that I want to acknowledge with these quarantine stations is that they weren't always, actually, I'll rephrase, they were never great in terms of the facilities available, treatment of people, everything else that goes into it. And I'm not going to go into that too much, because I know that this has already been quite a sad stitch with me, just in terms of the topics that we're talking about here and chatting away with. So this is where I take the emotion away a bit when I'm listening to these sorts of stories, like the stories about the quarantine stations and things that have happened there. And I guess it's not just the quarantine stations; it's the closed down jails and the psychiatric wards and such, and putting more on the analytical hat and the hats from being a student of psychology and sociology many moons ago when I was back in school, and having that curiosity about what life was like, how people were treated, and acknowledging that a lot of bad things happened because people in some cases didn't know better, and they should have known better. And some cases, the people who should have known better were trying to justify their actions by saying that it was in the name of science, and any other words that they were trying to say, okay, it was because of this, not because I'm a bad person or anything to that effect, when surely they were bad people who did awful, awful things. And that's where it's just sort of learning about the history and acknowledging that it was horrible. And I'm glad that in many cases things have improved in that case, and that we have a lot of the medical stuff available. So medical treatments, that's probably where I'm coming from, the word that I'm trying to use here, that we have better ways of treating and handling mental illness, for example, or knowing that we now have a lot of different medications for chickenpox, smallpox, measles, mumps, all of those sorts of diseases as well, that treatments weren't available for 100 years ago. And it was also interesting learning about the Spanish flu when it came to Australia, let alone the pandemic that had happened at that time 100 years ago, how a lot, but not a lot, has changed. And a lot changing in the sense that we've got better treatments for medications and such, but not a lot changing in the sense that the way that the politicians and medical professionals and such handled those situations, it actually hadn't changed too much compared with what we've all lived through with the current pandemic that is settling down. We've learnt how to live with it now, and it was just interesting that a lot, but not a lot, has changed, and just it's just different. So, with that in mind, let's see if we can get into a lighter mood. Again, a lighter topic, because I'm so sorry for, again, this getting to be a bit morbid and it not being as positive as what I was hoping it to be. So let's try for that change of pace again and find a new topic to talk about. So, one of the other things that I've been getting into recently is watching Bridgerton on Netflix. And I am on the last episode of the 4 episodes or so that are of the third season. And I'm slowly getting through the episode. I'm unintentionally watching it in really small chunks because of other things that I've got happening in life and other things that I'm wanting to do. And initially, when I started jotting down my notes for this Stitch With Me and Chat Along and all that jazz, I was perhaps back. I think I'd only watched the first episode, maybe the second episode at the most. And when I was getting my notes sorted out for this particular Stitch With Me, Chat With Me, I was starting to think about what a Bridgerton inspired cross stitch chart would look like. And without a doubt, it would have to be a sampler, because of all the samplers that I've seen through Flosstube and when I've been looking to support local businesses and such by purchasing charts, material, and so forth, the the key things that stand out for me in a sampler is that, regardless of it being an original or a reproduction, is that it must have a border of some kind, preferably a repetitive one that perhaps looks like a floral kind of border. It must have a house. It must have an alphabet and numbers or some kind of phrase, sentence wording. It can have animals in it, whether it be like farmyard animals, or it could have the likes of horse and carriage. It could have sheep, ducks, geese, anything in between, really, dogs, cats, whatever takes a fancy. Also noting that for original samplers, I'd also totally acknowledge that a lot of the samplers are to do with young girls at the time practicing the stitching, and I also acknowledge that it was to show the diversity in the stitches that they were able to do, and it not just being cross stitch, that it would be embroidery more broadly speaking. And also the purpose of some of the samples would be to test out the size of stitching to then emboss. I'm not sure if embossing it was the right word here. There's a similar word that will come to me as part of chattering away here. But to have the initials of the owners stitched onto the clothing, the bed sheets, and so forth, like especially if a lot of the clothing and bed sheets and such were washed in bulk by the house staff. So to put into perspective, I'm picturing the likes of Downton Abbey, for example, or Bridgerton, and similar shows and movies and such, where you're living in a mansion and you have house staff who clean and cook for you and mend things and all the likes of that. And as part of cooking, cleaning, and such, you also need to be able to separate the different things that you've cleaned to then know who they belong to and put the right bedding onto the right bed for the right person. So that's the whirlwind way of saying this is where I acknowledge, I guess, the purposes of many of the original samplers and what their purposes were for the time. So with that in mind, moving over to Bridgerton inspired samplers, I'm near thinking that it would need to be almost like a chatelaine to really do Bridgerton justice, because aside from me paying partial attention to the storylines and what's being said or what's not being said and the visuals that we see, it's the visual component especially that has me thinking of a chatelaine, because we've got these really beautiful embroideries that are on the clothing that the characters wear. We've got these gorgeous, wonderful, amazing wigs that many of the women wear as well. It's a true testament to the creativity that the set designers and such, their efforts of putting together these wigs, but also acknowledging that these wigs in this show is inspired by what life was like back in the Victorian era and similar eras. And I guess the hairdressing skills that the house staff had almost compared with what we know of today, because of how much significant change there has been of women's hairstyles, and they will forever continue to evolve, which is something that I love. It's also acknowledging that, wow, those wigs must be so heavy for the actors to wear, and strengthening the neck muscles perhaps to enable the wearing of the wigs, and also acknowledging that back in the day, the careful walking and movement of the ladies to ensure the hair stayed put. And then as time goes on, because the hair wouldn't be washed as much, maybe, I don't know, I'm speculating here, that there would be certain hygiene factors that would enable the hairstyles to stay in place for just a little bit longer than we're perhaps accustomed to today. But that said, going back to the samplers and cross stitch inspired charts and such that would involve the inspiration from Bridgerton, For starters, the colours. The colours would need to be vibrant. We would need to pay homage to the different families that are part of the Bridgerton story, and then perhaps maybe key phrases or key words and such that would need to be included. I don't know what they would be. I certainly acknowledge that they're bigger fans that are 10 times bigger than I am. I'm just a side watcher. I enjoy it for what it is, but I'm not wanting anything more. Uh, so there would be certainly the ball gowns, there would be the footmen, there would be the horse and carriage and the beautiful gardens that they walk through. There would be croquet, games of croquet, there would be piano, there would be sheet music, there would be books, there would be artwork, there would be, oh, what else? Certainly the wigs would need to somehow incorporate the amazing and beautiful wigs that the women have, or the hairstyles rather. There would be the wisteria, the plants. Wisteria especially would be a plant that would need to feature. And it could even be the border, perhaps, if there was a border for this particular chart. And as part of me doing like a quick search, or Google search rather, to see if there were any existing cross-stitch charts out there that really could fit what I've got in my mind's eye of something that could really do Bridgerton justice. I had done some searches on the internet and I came across an Etsy store that the name of the store escapes me right now, but I'll try and put the details of it into the description box below. And this particular store that I've got in mind, they actually have done these cross-stitch designs that are beautiful. They're more inspired by the fairy tales. So I'm thinking along the lines of the Disney princesses or characters from fairy tales, like the Grimm brothers stories and such. And I'll see if I'll put links and such into the description box below. And if I'm able to, through editing and such, I'll see if I can put some pictures in as well to really help describe what, or show what I'm trying to describe here, because I know I'm not going to be able to do it justice. The best way I can put it is that the pictures that I'm thinking of are quite similar to the Quakers and the Long Dog Samplers. Long Dog Samplers especially, that's where I'm thinking of for this particular Etsy store, that they've got some really beautiful designs there that I think could be close to what I'm thinking of for what could be done for a Bridgerton design. And I don't have the talent or interest to be able to create something that would do Bridgerton justice. So I'm saying all of this in the hope that anyone who is listening who has that strong interest in Bridgerton and similar stories and shows and such, and that era of life in the world, that you might be able to design something, because it's something that could do well. With that in mind, I have never actually sat down and stitched a sampler before. I'm still waiting for that perfect sampler to come along, or not necessarily perfect sampler, but one that sparks interest enough for me to want to sit down and stitch it. And the closest that I've come to is some of the Quaker inspired stitching, and the most recent chart that I purchased as part of the 123 Stitch gift voucher that I received from the Black Needle Society's Winter and Stars Hollow stitching retreat that I was part of. In my last episode, I shared with you the haul from that particular gift voucher, and in that was the chart that I'm yet to sit down and stitch. And I have heaps of fabric. It is going to be almost a situation of analysis paralysis, or having too many options to then figure out which one I want to do. So with this particular chart that I purchased, I'm yet to figure out what fabric I want to stitch on it, let alone what colour thread I want to use, because I know I want to use one of or many of the specialty threads that I've either purchased or received through some stitchy boxes that the Black Needle Society have curated, and they've done it. They are, to me, amazing with the way they've curated it. So I've got lots of options, and if I enjoy stitching this chart, then it could very much work out to being I stitch it multiple times in the different coloured threads that I want to use, and it could work out. I'm hoping that it will. So with that in mind, it's also what I've loved watching and has me thinking about a bit with the likes of Bridgerton and Downton Abbey. It's that social history side of things that has me curious about what I would be like living in that era, and knowing what I am like. I would probably be quite similar to Penelope from Bridgerton, who would always be hiding away in the shadows and near being near afraid to put oneself out there and find a suitable suitor. Or if it was the likes of Downton Abbey, I would perhaps be one of the housekeeping staff who would perhaps be stuck in the kitchen, or I'd be the one of the cleaners, or one of the ladies in waiting, or one of the people that sort of is like the handmaiden, or whatever you want to call their role. Or if I was one of the ladies of society, I'd be the one content to an extent to go along with the rules, not make waves, and then as the times change, I would see how the world was evolving, and then find that independence and realize that the rules do need to change, and then rebel to an extent whilst trying to keep the peace. It would be a disjointed way of living to a little bit. But I also, with those shows, those period shows, it helps me to appreciate the life that I have now. So in the modern era, the modern age. So the modern age in terms of independence to an extent, the electricity, heating, climate control, that having the modern roof over my head, and the luck that I have, so to speak, of living in Australia and having the amenities that to an extent I take advantage of, and yeah, I guess advantage of to an extent, but take for granted. That's the better phrasing that I was thinking of. The taking for granted at times until we have the likes of a natural disaster or a temporary blackout, or something like that, and I then appreciate how much I love modern technology of having a computer and technology, or not technology, the electricity, the heating, the cooling, and the clothes that I get to choose to wear, and the freedoms that come with being able to work and earn a living and not be restricted to waiting for my family to choose a suitable person for me to marry, and any of the restrictions that come with society or the class that I am part of, that I have to follow certain rules to remain part of that society and to not make waves, and to choose who I live with, to choose where I live, and know that I get to choose a relationship for love rather than financial stability and everything that goes with it. Similar to the storylines that we see in Bridgerton and Downton Abbey, where for high society women, especially, but I guess even lower classes as well, that you could only do certain jobs because of the class or family that you were born into. And it seemed outrageous for some people in some classes to want to do something different or to do something that was out of the norm, because it may have been considered to be reaching beyond your means or reaching beyond your class, to want to have a better life than those around you. So I'm so thankful for the ability to not have to worry about that anymore because of the women's liberation rights and the fights and the struggles that have come before me. So with that in mind, I won't go down that path of talking about women's rights too much, because I know that it can be like a polarizing kind of topic to talk about, but it's one of those things that I'm certainly passionate about, of I guess people's rights in general, that it is not just restricted to the likes of women, and that there are rights that all people should have. But anyway, I'm not going to get political. I am not going to get political or anything like that, because the aim of all of this talking and chatting and all the rest is to try and get a bit of the stitching done. So I appreciate that I haven't really talked too much about the different projects that I'm working on or what you've seen. So if you are at any stage curious about the projects that I have worked on, and I know that I've mentioned this earlier as well, that in the description box below I'll have a list of all the different projects that I've worked on, and that a lot of these projects are associated with the AFL Stitching Challenge that I've been doing, because I'm still about one round behind. So at the moment, as I'm doing this voice recording, we are in about halfway through round 11. And the good thing is that the Sydney Swans, they played on Thursday night. They won their game, which means that on Monday night, my boyfriend and I get to have 2-for-1 burgers as part of a sign up membership thing that I did for a burger place called Grilled, that is at least here in Australia. I don't know if it's an international franchise at all, but this particular deal thing, and this is me just talking about it. I'm not getting any other kickbacks by talking about all of this, but it's sort of me just saying, hey, it's available for anyone in Australia who enjoys burgers, and anyone who may want to take up on the offer. So the premise is that if you do enjoy the football, or if you have a favourite team or something along those lines, whether it be NRL or AFL. You can sign up, nominate what your favourite team is, and or who your favourite team is, and Grilled then notify you of when that team has won, and that you then get a special barcode that you get scanned when you're dining in, and depending on what burgers you've ordered, the either way the price will be near half price. It'll be 2 for 1 burgers, which I think is still pretty cool. It means that we're spending half of what we normally would spend if we didn't have that deal. And I think it's a really nice date night kind of thing for us, and means that Michael doesn't have to cook. And I can cook, but I tend to choose not to. I don't enjoy cooking much, partly because I make a big mess and I have to clean it up. So it's that component, and it's also not fair of me to ask Michael to clean up after me in me making messes when I'm cooking. So also, uh, historically, he is uncomfortable when I am cooking in the kitchen because of the way that I cook compared with his style of cooking in terms of the way preparation is done and organization of things and all that jazz. I have improved, but I just know that he doesn't mind cooking, and for him it's a creative outlet, and it's also a way for him to take a break from technology and decompress after the day. Even though he is now a man of leisure, it was something that, especially when he was working and having long days sometimes, or tough days at work, as we all have, the cooking was a way for him just to focus on the task at hand and just put aside any of the experiences he may have had with work for that day and make a really yummy meal. He is a good cook. He is very good at many of the Asian stir fry style of dishes. That's his preference for cuisine, and he's very good. He knows his flavors well now, where he knows that if he's put a bit too much soy, he can put some other ingredient in to balance things out. And it's a good way for us to get our veggie intake up. And he spoils me. I'm very lucky to have him in my life for that. So aside from many other reasons that I feel very blessed and lucky to have him in my life for. So with that, all of that in mind, I am going to wrap up here and finish up me chattering away. So I just want to say thank you for spending some time with me in this Stitch with Me, and I hope that you come back. I hope that you've enjoyed this Stitch with Me, because I don't do these very often, and I hope you come back for a regular episode in a couple of weeks' time. And I look forward to sharing with you some of my progress of the other projects that I've worked on that you haven't seen in this particular when I can get my words out, in this particular Stitch with Me. So thank you again so much for spending some time with me, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon.